Hey everyone, what if everything you fear about the financial world is actually the doorway to your freedom? In the quiet moments of life, when the bills are due, when the future feels uncertain, when the markets look like an unpredictable storm, most people freeze. They hold back, they hesitate, they worry that one wrong decision will cost them everything. But what if I told you that certainty is not found in the world around you, but in the world within you? The truth is, you're far closer to financial freedom than you've ever allowed yourself to believe, because freedom isn't built on luck, it's built on clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you stop letting fear drive the steering wheel. See, for years, people have been taught that the financial world is complicated, that it's only for experts, insiders, institutions, giants who seem to control everything. But the reality is far more empowering. Once you understand the rules of this game, once you learn how the world of money truly works, you realize something life-changing. This game was never meant to crush you. It was meant to elevate you. The market isn't your enemy. Your confusion is. And confusion dissolves the moment you step into a new identity. The identity of someone who is no longer shaken by headlines, volatility, or fear. I remember a moment, years ago, when someone asked, "Why does wealth feel so far away? Why does it look like the rich play with a different set of rules?" And the answer was simple: they do. But those rules aren't hidden. They're accessible, they're available, and they can be learned. You don't need millions to start. You need decisions. One decision to learn, one decision to take control, one decision to never let fear dictate your financial story again. Wealth is not a number. Wealth is a mindset. A state of being that says, no matter what the market does, I remain unshakable. Because when you understand the truth behind financial winters, behind volatility, behind emotional traps, behind fees, behind media noise, the fear disappears. And what remains is confidence. You are stronger than the economy, because your greatest asset isn't money, it's certainty. A certainty that grows every time you learn, every time you take a step, every time you choose empowerment over hesitation. So as we step into this journey together, remember this: financial freedom isn't for the chosen few. It's for the ones who choose themselves. And today, you just made that choice. Chapter 1: The Road to Financial Freedom. What if the life you dream about is only one courageous decision away? When most people think about money, the first feeling that rises inside them is fear. Fear of losing it, fear of not having enough, fear of repeating the same financial patterns they saw growing up. But here's the truth that changes everything. Your financial freedom isn't built in the world around you. It's built inside you. The road to financial freedom doesn't begin with money. It begins with mindset. Your mindset decides whether you stay stuck or rise above, whether you react to life or design it, whether you live in fear or move with intention. And in this first chapter, you're invited to step into a new identity, an identity of someone who becomes unshakable. There's a story I remember, a conversation with someone who spent their entire life believing wealth was a secret world, a place guarded by gates only the rich could enter. But one day, they realized something life-changing. The gates weren't locked. They had simply never tried to push them open. Most people are not held back by lack of money. They're held back by lack of knowledge. When that realization hits, something shifts. Suddenly the world feels less threatening and more open, less random and more predictable. Because the moment you learn how the game of wealth truly works, fear loses its power over you. Imagine standing at the edge of a long, unknown road. The sky is dark, you hear the noise of uncertainty, and every step forward feels risky. That's how most people feel about their financial life: unsure, overwhelmed, waiting for the perfect time. But the road itself is not dangerous. The danger is standing still. If you don't choose your financial path, someone else will choose it for you, and their choice will never lead you to freedom. This chapter reminds you that the market isn't your enemy, the economy isn't your enemy, and your past isn't your enemy. The real enemy is hesitation, the silent thief of dreams. Because every time you hesitate, life moves on without you. There's another moment, a quiet one, where someone asked, "Why does success feel so far away?" And the answer was simple: because they were measuring the distance in miles, not in decisions. You don't need to leap across the entire road. You just need one step. One step that says, I'm done letting fear guide me. Your freedom begins the moment fear stops making your decisions. That's when you start seeing money differently. You stop seeing it as something you chase and start seeing it as something you build. You stop hoping for opportunities and start creating them. You stop surviving and start designing. Because wealth isn't about how much you earn. It's about how much clarity you hold. And clarity is built through learning the rules, mastering your emotions, and building habits that compound over time. Financial freedom is not a destination, it's a direction. Be a direction toward discipline, a direction toward confidence, a direction toward becoming someone who cannot be shaken, not by headlines, not by panic, not by unpredictable markets. And when you take your first step on this road, something beautiful happens, the world opens. The noise quiets, the fear fades, and the path becomes clear. The journey begins with this chapter, not because it gives you money, but because it gives you power. The power to choose your destiny, the power to shape your future, the power to become truly, completely unshakable. Chapter 2, Winter is coming, but when? What if every financial storm you fear is actually the greatest opportunity of your life? People fear market crashes the same way they fear dark clouds in the sky. They imagine loss, chaos, disaster. But the truth is far more empowering. Every winter in history has created more millionaires than any sunny season ever could. The only difference is this: some people panic and others prepare. The market doesn't punish you, your reactions do. That's where this chapter takes you, into the emotional center of how people behave when things get tough. Not the math, not the charts, the emotions. Because money doesn't move the world, fear and greed do. There's a story I carry with me, a moment burned deep into memory. A man once told me, I sold everything during the crash. I couldn't handle the fear. Years later, he watched the market rise again, far beyond what he could have imagined, but he wasn't a part of it anymore. Not because he made a bad decision, but because fear made the decision for him. You're never destroyed by what happens, you're destroyed by how you respond. And that's when the truth sinks in. Winters don't break people, their panic does. This chapter reveals one of the most important lessons of your life. The market moves in cycles, always has, always will. There are seasons of growth, seasons of calm, seasons of fear, and seasons of chaos. But winter doesn't last forever. It never has, and it never will. But here's the beautiful twist. Winter is also the season where wealth is built. Quietly, silently, patiently. When the world is running away, the wise are stepping forward. The moment everyone else runs is the moment opportunity walks in. And suddenly, the world looks different. The fear that once controlled you begins to lose its grip. Because when you know winter is natural, predictable, even necessary, you stop trying to avoid it and start preparing for it. You start to understand something powerful. Wealth isn't built in the good times. It's built in the downturns, when prices drop, emotions rise, and everyone else is reacting instead of thinking. There's another story, not dramatic, not loud, just real. A woman who invested consistently, even during winters, even during crashes, even when the world looked like it was falling apart. She didn't stop. She didn't panic. She stayed steady. And years later, she realized something extraordinary. Her wealth didn't grow during the highs. It multiplied during the lows. Fortunes aren't made in sunshine. They're made in the storm. And that's the heart of this chapter. You learn that winter is not your enemy. It's your advantage. And instead of asking, what if a crash happens? You begin asking, am I ready when it does? Because winter is coming. And that's not a warning. It's a promise of opportunity, transformation, and growth. A promise that if you prepare, if you stay calm, if you stay consistent, you will rise stronger than you ever imagined. You realize that the people who struggle are the ones who wait for certainty. The ones who thrive are the ones who prepare for winter long before it arrives. The goal isn't to predict the storm. The goal is to remain unshakable when it hits. And once you adopt that mindset, Once you stop fearing winters and start respecting them, you enter a state of financial power very few people ever experience. This chapter teaches you something timeless. Winter is not a threat. Winter is a teacher. Winter builds resilience. Winter builds wisdom. Winter builds wealth. And when you understand that, you become unshakable. Chapter 3. No one can predict the market, bro. What if the biggest lie in finance is the belief that someone out there knows the future? Because the moment you understand this truth, your entire relationship with money transforms. The world is full of experts, analysts, headlines, predictions, and promises. But none of them, not one, can consistently predict where the market will go tomorrow. And the freedom begins when you finally stop waiting for the person who knows it. While most people chase predictions the way lost travelers chase mirages. They listen to forecasts, follow trends, copy opinions, and hope someone can protect them from uncertainty. But the problem is simple. Uncertainty is the nature of the market. It's not a glitch. It's the design. The moment you stop trying to predict, you start learning how to prepare, and that shift is where real wealth begins. There's a story I remember. A man who spent years jumping from one prediction to another, believing every expert who claimed to know the next crash, the next boom, the next unstoppable stock. Every time he followed someone, he felt confident, until he didn't. Because the sure things were never sure, and the guaranteed wins were never guaranteed. His wealth didn't disappear because of the market. It disappeared because he trusted predictions over principles. You don't lose money by being wrong. You lose money by believing someone else is always right. And that realization hits hard. Because deep down, we all crave certainty. We want someone to tell us, buy this, sell that, this is safe, that is risky. But certainty from others is an illusion. The real certainty comes from understanding the long-term truth behind the market. It always moves forward, but never in a straight line. Imagine standing on a beach. The waves rush in, crash hard, pull back, then come in again. If you stare at a single wave, it feels unpredictable. But if you look at the ocean over time, you see a rhythm, a pattern. That's the market. Day to day, it looks chaotic. Year to year, it looks uncertain. But decade to decade, it always rises. Short-term chaos, long-term direction. And when you understand that, your emotions stop controlling your decisions. This chapter reveals something powerful. Even the smartest minds in finance, Nobel Prize winners, billionaires, legendary investors, openly admit they cannot predict the market in the short term. They don't try to. They don't waste energy pretending to know the future. Instead, they build systems that win without needing perfect predictions. There's another story, a quiet one, about someone who stopped trying to pick the perfect moment. He didn't try to time the dips. He didn't chase the peaks. He simply stayed consistent, investing a little at a time, without letting emotions control him. Years later, while others were exhausted from trying to outguess the market, he was free, because he played the only game that works, patience over prediction. Predicting the market doesn't build wealth. Discipline does. Imagine how liberating that is. To no longer panic when the market drops, to no longer rush when it rises, to no longer depend on the noise of experts and headlines. Instead, you start depending on something far stronger, principles that work in every season. The truth is simple. No one knows when the next high will come. No one knows when the next crash will hit. No one knows what the market will do tomorrow. But you don't need to know. Your power doesn't come from prediction. It comes from preparation. Preparation means building a strategy that survives storms, thrives in calm waters, and grows over time, no matter what. Preparation means staying consistent when others are reacting. Preparation means trusting the process, not the predictions. And once this truth sinks in, something inside you changes. The anxiety fades. The noise becomes irrelevant. The panic loses its grip. Because you're no longer trying to control the uncontrollable. This chapter teaches you something life-changing. You cannot predict the market, but you can become unshakable within it, and that is where real financial freedom begins. Chapter 4. Hidden Fees and Half-Truths. What if the biggest danger to your wealth isn't the market, but the things quietly draining your money without you even noticing. That's how this chapter begins, with a truth most people never see. Because the financial world doesn't just move through booms and crashes, it moves through hidden traps, invisible costs, silent charges, small fees that look harmless but compound into a lifetime of lost freedom. Most people don't lose wealth because they made bad decisions. They lose wealth because someone else made decisions for them, and they never knew the price. The world of money doesn't just reward the informed, it punishes the unaware. This chapter is your wake-up call, a deep dive into the hidden systems that quietly take your wealth while telling you they're helping you grow it. There's a story I still remember. Someone once shared how they invested for 20 years, believing their financial advisor was helping them build a future. The statements looked good. The long-term charts looked promising. But when they finally checked the real numbers, when they looked at the fine print, they realized something shocking. Fees had eaten nearly 1/3 of their potential wealth. Not losses, not bad timing, just silent fees year after year. It's not what you earn, it's what you get to keep that determines your future. And this chapter reveals how most people never question the system. They trust the titles, they trust the institutions, they trust the idea that professionals always act in their best interest. But trust without transparency is how wealth disappears. The financial industry thrives on complexity, big words, fancy labels, polished presentations, because the more confused you are, the easier it is to charge you for things you don't understand. And the easier it is to hide the truth right in front of you. If a system needs to confuse you, it's not designed to serve you. Because once you understand the truth behind fees, you'll never look at your money the same way again. Imagine walking into a store, buying something worth $100, and the cashier secretly charging you $3, $5, $7 every time you step inside. You'd notice it immediately. You'd question it. You'd stop going. But in the financial world, those same charges happen quietly, automatic, invisible, and consistent. 0.5% here, 1% there, a management fee disguised as a benefit, a service charge disguised as protection, a performance fee disguised as expertise. It seems small, almost harmless, until you watch it drain hundreds of thousands of dollars over decades. A 1% fee may look small, until it steals 20 years of your life. Yes, because 1% over decades compounds into years of lost freedom, lost opportunity, lost growth. Most people don't feel the loss daily, but they feel it deeply at the end when they look at their account and wonder why it isn't what it should be. This chapter exposes the half-truths, the promises that sound helpful but are designed to keep you dependent. We beat the market. We know what's coming next. We'll manage everything for you. When in reality, most advisors underperform the market, charge for predictions they can't deliver, and guide clients with incentives that aren't aligned with the client's future. There's another story, someone who spent years believing they had a top-tier financial service. The team looked impressive, the office looked expensive, the statements looked polished. But one day, they compared a simple low-cost index fund with what they were invested in. The index fund beat their entire portfolio, without predictions, without complexity, without management fees. That moment changed their life. Complexity creates dependency. Simplicity creates freedom. And the truth is, the simplest strategies often outperform the complicated ones, because they let your money grow without interruption. This chapter teaches you how to recognize who gets paid, how much do they really take, and what do you truly gain in return. You begin to understand that financial freedom doesn't come from finding the perfect advisor. It comes from becoming a knowledgeable investor who refuses to be blindfolded. Your financial future should not be decided by someone else's incentives. You learn to ask the questions most people never ask, the questions that reveal the truth behind every investment and every promise. And in that moment, confusion disappears, confidence rises, clarity replaces fear. Because once you understand how hidden fees work, once you see the truth behind half-truths, once you recognize the traps, you take back control of your wealth. And that's why this chapter is so important. It doesn't just teach you about money, It teaches you how to protect your future from anything that tries to quietly steal it. This is the chapter where you stop being managed and start being in command. Chapter 5. Resisting the Lies. What if the biggest obstacles to your financial freedom aren't the markets, not the crashes, not the economy, but the lies you've been silently believing, because the world of money is filled with illusions. Narratives built by fear, stories shaped by headlines, messages designed to control your emotions, not your future. And if you don't learn to resist those lies, you'll spend your whole life reacting instead of rising. Most people don't realize how deeply these lies shape their decisions. Lies like, you need to be rich to invest. You need perfect timing to win. The market is too dangerous. You're too late. You're not smart enough. These thoughts feel real because they're repeated everywhere. News channels, social media, friends, family, even financial experts. But repetition doesn't make anything true. The stories you believe will shape the wealth you create. This chapter is where you learn to break those stories and build new ones that actually serve your future. There's a moment I remember, someone who told me, I'll invest when the market feels safer. But here's the truth. The market never feels safe. Not when it's rising, not when it's falling. Not during elections. Not during recessions. Not during booms. Not during crashes. Because the market isn't supposed to feel safe. It's supposed to feel emotional. That's how it works. That's how it tests you. And that's how it rewards the ones who stay calm when the world panics. You don't succeed by avoiding fear. You succeed by not letting fear decide your life. And once you understand that, something inside you shifts. A sense of power, clarity, confidence. Because the world can lie to you, but you no longer lie to yourself. One of the biggest lies people fall for is the myth that someone out there knows exactly what's coming next. Every time the market moves, headlines shout predictions, experts promise certainty, influencers claim insight, but no one, not even the sharpest minds in finance, can consistently predict tomorrow. And when you stop chasing predictions, you stop falling for lies. There's another story, someone who stopped checking the news every time the market dipped. He stopped reacting to fear-driven headlines. Instead, he stayed focused on his long-term strategy. Years later, he realized something profound. His account grew not because the world was stable, but because he was. Stability in your strategy matters more than stability in the world. This chapter teaches you that the financial world profits off your fear. Fear keeps you clicking. Fear keeps you watching. Fear keeps you paying attention to the wrong things, the noise, the drama, the panic. But none of that noise builds wealth. Consistency does. Patience does. Discipline does. The lies you resist shape the reality you create. One of the most damaging lies is the idea that you need to be perfect. Perfect timing, perfect decisions, perfect picks. But perfection is a trap. The most successful investors in history didn't win by being perfect. They won by staying invested, staying steady, and refusing to be shaken by temporary storms. You don't need perfection. You need participation. Another lie is the belief that wealth is only for certain people. People with better jobs, better degrees, better connections, better luck. But wealth has nothing to do with luck. It has everything to do with behavior. Two people with the same income can end up in two completely different financial realities. Not because one got lucky, but because one believed in progress, while the other believed in limitation. Your behavior builds your wealth, not your background. And then there's the quietest lie of all. The lie you tell yourself, I'll start later. I'll figure it out one day. I don't know enough. But later never comes for most people. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they never challenge the lies that keep them waiting. This chapter is your turning point. A moment where you stop accepting the stories that keep you stuck and start choosing the beliefs that move you forward. The world will keep selling fear. The headlines will keep selling panic. The market will keep testing your emotions. But once you develop the mindset of someone who resists the lies, someone who sees past the noise, you become untouchable. This is the chapter where you stop getting influenced and start getting empowered. And when that happens, you don't just grow your wealth. You grow into the person who can protect it, multiply it, and stay unshakable in any financial season. Chapter 6. Silencing the enemy within. What if the greatest threat to your financial freedom isn't the market, the economy, or the world, but the voice inside you that whispers fear? Because every investor eventually discovers the same truth. The hardest battle isn't fought on Wall Street. It's fought in your own mind. You can learn every strategy. You can understand every principle. You can prepare for every season. But if you don't learn how to master your emotions will master your money. Most people don't lose wealth because of bad investments. They lose it because of fear, impatience, panic, or doubt. They buy when they feel excited, and they sell when they feel scared. They follow their emotions instead of following their strategy. Your emotions are the invisible hands that shape your financial destiny. And until you silence the emotional enemy within, you will always feel one step away from losing control. There's a powerful story. Someone who invested consistently, patiently, and quietly for years. But the moment the market dipped, panic took over. They sold everything in fear, convinced a crash was coming. Months later, the market recovered, soared, and grew far beyond where it fell. But they weren't part of the rise, because they listened to the voice that whispered, "Get out now while you still can." That whisper is the enemy, not the market, not the economy, not volatility. It's that internal voice built on old fears, old beliefs, old patterns. Fear will always speak, but it doesn't have to lead. This chapter teaches you something crucial. Your brain is wired for survival, not wealth. It's designed to avoid danger, not create opportunity. And when you look at money through the lens of fear, every movement feels like a threat. The market goes up, you fear missing out. The market goes down, you fear losing everything. The market stays flat, you fear you're doing something wrong. Fear becomes your financial compass, and fear is a terrible guide. There's another moment. Someone once said, "I check my portfolio every day." And every day their emotions rose and fell like waves. Excited one moment, terrified the next. Their financial life wasn't controlled by the market. It was controlled by the screen in their hand. You can't grow wealth with a stressed mind. Your mind needs space. Your decisions need clarity. Your strategy needs peace. This chapter dives deeply into how the brain creates illusions that feel real but are built on emotion, not fact. Loss aversion, fight or flight reactions, impulsive decisions, all of these are natural, but none of them lead to financial freedom. Imagine trying to climb a mountain with someone shouting danger at every step. That's what your internal voice does during volatility. It tries to protect you, but in the wrong way. Because true protection doesn't come from running, it comes from preparation. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. And once you understand that fear doesn't disappear, you just stop letting it drive, everything changes. You learn that emotional mastery is a financial skill, a skill that separates those who panic from those who prosper, a skill that helps you stay calm while others crumble, a skill that turns uncertainty into opportunity. There's a quiet story here too. Someone who used to panic with every dip. But over time, they trained their mind. They stopped reacting to the noise, stopped checking every headline, stopped believing every prediction. They built discipline, they built patience, they built mental strength. And eventually, they realized something powerful. The market didn't get easier. They got stronger. The market rewards emotional strength more than intelligence. You don't need to be the smartest. You don't need to know everything. You just need to stay steady when others shake. This chapter is your emotional armor, the layer that protects your decisions, your discipline, and your long-term vision. Because once you silence the inner enemy, the rest of the world can't break you. And that's the moment you become truly, undeniably, unshakable. This is the chapter where your mind stops being your obstacle and becomes your greatest asset. Chapter 7. The Core 4. What if building real wealth isn't about doing 100 things right, but mastering just a few things so well that nothing can shake your future? Because most people believe wealth is complicated, overwhelming, almost impossible to understand. But in reality, financial freedom is built on a simple foundation. A foundation so powerful that if you master it, you won't need predictions, luck, or perfect timing. You only need 4 principles, 4 timeless truths, 4 decisions that guide your entire financial life. And these 4 principles are what separate people who hope for wealth from people who build it. Complexity destroys confidence. Simplicity builds power. This chapter is where everything becomes clear. The noise fades, the fear dissolves, the confusion disappears. Because when you understand the core 4, you don't just invest smarter, you live smarter. Let's step into the first story. Someone who spent years trying to chase the next big thing, switching strategies every time a new trend popped up. Crypto today, tech stocks tomorrow, real estate next year. Their portfolio had no direction, no structure, no consistency. And the more choices they made, the more overwhelmed they became. Until one day, they learned the core 4, and suddenly, everything that felt chaotic became simple. The path to wealth isn't wide, it's focused. The first core principle teaches you to make decisions, not out of emotion, but out of strategy. Lowering your risk while increasing your returns, not by gambling, but by understanding how the market truly works. You learn how small adjustments, quiet choices, and disciplined actions build years of growth. The second principle reveals that the biggest enemy of wealth isn't loss. It's unnecessary risk. Most people carry far more risk than they understand. They chase hot stocks, trust predictions, try timing the market, all while exposing their future to danger they never intended. But when you apply the core 4, you reduce unnecessary risk without reducing opportunity. You don't build wealth by taking more risk. You build it by taking the right risk. The third principle teaches you something that changes everything. Costs matter. Every fee, every percentage, every hidden charge slowly eats away your freedom. It's invisible at first, but devastating in time. The core 4 teaches you how to structure your investments so your growth compounds for you, not for someone else. There's a moment here. A man who followed a simple, efficient strategy for years. No predictions, no emotional switches, no panic selling, just consistency. When he retired, he realized something astonishing. He didn't become wealthy by being perfect. He became wealthy by being disciplined. Discipline multiplies wealth faster than intelligence. The fourth principle is the deepest one. The idea that you don't need to beat the market, you simply need to join it in a smarter way. The greatest investors in history don't chase highs, they don't fear lows, and they don't attempt to outguess the world. They build portfolios that win automatically over time. Imagine planting a seed. You don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You water it, you protect it, you trust the process. And one day, it becomes a tree. That's what the core 4 does. It turns your financial life into something that grows naturally, consistently, predictably. The core 4 transforms the market from something you fear into something that works for you. This chapter teaches you that the secret to becoming unshakable is not mastering everything, it's mastering the right things. You learn how to design a portfolio that balances growth with safety, opportunity with simplicity, peace with confidence. You learn how to protect your downside without losing your upside. You learn how to stop guessing and start winning. And most importantly, you learn how to become someone who doesn't panic when the world shakes, because your financial foundation is stronger than the storm. This is the chapter where your wealth stops being accidental and starts being intentional. Once you understand the core 4, you stop reacting to the market like everyone else. You start moving through the market like someone who's already free. Chapter 8, your personal plan for financial freedom. What if the life you want isn't waiting for you someday, but waiting for you to start today? Because this is the moment where everything stops being theory and becomes your reality. Up until now, you've learned about emotions, principles, cycles, discipline, and the truths behind wealth. But this chapter is where you turn knowledge into action, and action into freedom. For most people, financial success feels like a dream floating somewhere far ahead. A dream they'll reach one day, but one day only happens for people who take ownership, people who decide, people who build a plan so clear, so intentional, that their money finally begins moving in the direction of their life, not against it. Your financial freedom is not built by chance, it's built by choices, and those choices start right here, right now, in this chapter. There's a story of someone who made good money, worked hard, tried to save, but never felt in control. Every time they looked at their finances, it felt scattered. Random investments, emotional decisions, no structure, no direction. But the moment they created a personal plan, something aligned with their goals, their timeline, their risk level, everything changed. Their money stopped drifting. It started growing. Because a plan gives you clarity. Clarity gives you confidence. And confidence gives you freedom. You don't rise when life gets easier. You rise when your plan gets stronger. This chapter teaches you to design your future with intention. What do you want? When do you want it? And how are you going to get there? Most people never ask these questions. That's why most people never break free. But you're not most people. Not anymore. Your plan starts with understanding your purpose. Not just numbers, not just returns. Purpose. What kind of life do you want to live? What does freedom look like for you? Time with family, travel, peace of mind, no more financial anxiety. The ability to choose instead of settle. When you know your purpose, your plan becomes powerful. Money with no purpose gets wasted. Money with direction gets multiplied. Then comes the strategy. A strategy that aligns with the core four. A strategy that protects you in winters and accelerates you in summers. A strategy without fear, without guessing, without stress. This chapter teaches you how to automate your future. Automatic contributions, automatic growth, automatic discipline. Because the more automated your plan is, the less emotion can interfere with it. There's a quiet story here too. Someone who didn't make a high income, didn't have fancy degrees, didn't have perfect timing, but they had a plan. They stuck to it, month after month, year after year. And eventually their plan carried them further than their income ever could. Not because they were lucky, but because they were consistent. Consistency will take you further than intensity ever will. The truth is, you don't need to know everything. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to predict anything. You just need a plan that moves with you, not against you. When the market rises, your plan grows. When the market dips, your plan buys more. When fear hits, your plan stays steady. Your plan becomes your anchor. Your plan becomes your compass. Your plan becomes your path to freedom. A personal plan turns chaos into clarity, and clarity into wealth. And now, as this chapter comes to a close, so does the journey of this audiobook. But your real journey, the journey of you becoming financially unshakable, that journey begins the moment you take your first step. You now have the mindset, the principles, the emotional strength, the clarity, and the plan. This is where your story shifts. This is where your future expands. This is where you choose freedom, intentionally, powerfully, confidently. This is the chapter where you stop dreaming about financial freedom and start building it. And before we end, let me speak directly to you, because this moment matters. If this chapter, this journey, this message inspired you, if it made you think differently, if it made you feel stronger, clearer, and more in control of your financial future, then I invite you to stay connected with me, because your growth doesn't end here. It starts here. For more powerful book summaries, financial wisdom, and life-changing insights, make sure you hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to Growthpedia Finance. Your support helps this community grow, and it helps more people discover these lessons, these principles, these truths that can transform lives. So take a deep breath, hold this feeling of certainty, and step into the future you deserve. Your journey to becoming unshakable continues, and I'll meet you in the next video of Growthpedia Finance.